What's up, guys? AFL Grand Final is finally here. Sydney versus Brisbane. I'm hoping for a cracking matchup. Let's get into this little prediction video. So, looking back at their last meeting when they played earlier in the season, it was one of the best regular season games. Um, Brisbane just got the job done in the end, but I mean, it was one of those games where it was momentum swings. Sydney maybe could have put some more goals on the board, but when Brisbane got going, particularly like that third quarter, last quarter, they became hard to stop. But yeah, one of the best games. So looking through at their finals so far, Sydney, they've played their two games, they've won their two games up in the SCG. They take the trip down to the MCG, so they'll be a little bit worried going into the grand final, I guess. They've played, I think, four with Longmire now, and they've lost their last three, most recently in 2022 to Geelong, and that was a big loss as well. I had a little look at both teams' records in Melbourne, and Sydney's is slightly better. So hopefully that gives them a little bit of an edge. But yeah, so far, two great finals, and they've done good. Whereas Brisbane, they've obviously had to play three finals, won them all, and they've been a little bit up and down. I mean, they've played really good in parts of their first three games, but then they've had other parts where they've been not as good. I mean, you look at their first game, Carlton, they get out 60-0, then they let Carlton not let them back in, but they don't really finish the game off. Giants, obviously, they didn't start that game well, but they came back for an epic comeback. Even in last week's game, while it was a pretty good neck and neck battle for a lot of the game, there was still periods of the game where Geelong got in control. Yeah, all in all, both teams have had a pretty good final series, and they have deserved their spots in the grand final. Couple player things that I wanted to mention, obviously with team selections. So Callum Mills today was ruled out. They said he's not going to play, so I'm expecting Sydney to go in unchanged. And then the big one is for Brisbane. Obviously, Oscar McInerney is out. He did his shoulder. Fair effort to come back on. That was really courageous stuff in that game to come back on with his busted shoulder. Unfortunately, it does mean that he's out this week, so that's definitely going to shake things up for Brisbane. You're expecting Darcy Fort to come in, although I haven't seen that confirmed anywhere, but I would assume that will be the case. But anyway, I want to look at three things that I want to watch for in this game, or what I think is going to happen. The first one is going to be momentum swings. So spoke a little bit about it with Brisbane in their games. Um, the score will go up and down. I think sometimes Sydney will get a run on, sometimes Brisbane will get a run on. And it was very similar to how they played that first game. These are two of the best teams going about. They're going to have their moments in the game where they get on top of one another. Brisbane is more, they're going to fight even if they get down, 3, 4, 5 goals. They're willing to come back, and I think they can come back. Whereas with Sydney, although they can play pretty consistent and take control of a game, you saw them do it last week against Port. They started the game really well, then they put it beyond doubt, and they just kind of held it out. That's kind of been Sydney all year. I've noticed it. I know a few other people have said it, but they have that one really big quarter, and where they put on like 5 or 6 goals, and then they just kind of hold you out for the rest of the game. So interested to see. Second thing is, I do think it's going to be a high scoring game though. Obviously, yeah, there's going to be some momentum swings, I'm assuming, where it's up and down, but these are two teams that can really put a score on the board. I mean, Brisbane, I think, have scored 100 points or thereabouts in their last two finals games, or maybe like 90 points or something. It's been pretty high scoring for them, though. Sydney have been the same too. So, yeah, would not be surprised to see a high scoring game. And then the last thing I think that's going to be decided in this game is the contested ball. Now, Brisbane are really great in this area, but they've obviously got their ruckman out. And Sydney have a pretty stacked midfield. I mean, Heaney, Goulden, and Warner the other night in the Brownlow, all on 20 votes from the same team. It's mental stuff. And then, yeah, with the Big O out in the ruck, Grundy is one of the best ruckmen in the competition, has been for a while. Does that impact this contested ball game? Personally, I think Brisbane's a better team in the contested ball, but we'll have to wait and see. So that brings me into three key players I want to talk about from each team. So we'll start with Sydney. First one is obviously going to be Isaac Heaney. If they're going to win, Isaac Heaney's got to play well. He's an absolute superstar. He's been fantastic on the ball this year, and he can sneak forward and kick a few goals. If he has a ripping game, he could even get the Norm Smith. I know he's unlucky to miss out on that Brownlow, but yeah, I really think he can be a damaging one. Then the second one has to be Brodie Grundy. He's going up in a ruck against the guy who's not as experienced at him, Darcy Fort, we're assuming, who's only played 3 games this season. Brodie Grundy should be able to have his way in the ruck. And the other thing is he's really good around the ground. So it'd be interesting if Joe Danaher goes up and how that affects his game. So I think Joe Danaher has actually been really good down forward for him for a lot of the season, Brisbane. But he's going to have to do a fair share in the ruck. So Brodie Grundy's got to capitalise. The other interesting player for Sydney, Dane Rampe. Really interested to see who he marks down there. One of the things that makes him great is that he can play big and small. I feel like he'd probably get more of a matchup on a Cameron than one of the bigger players, but we'll have to see how it plays out. But yeah, Dane Rampe, player to watch. Brisbane players, again, going for a superstar, Lachie Neale. If they're going to win, Lachie Neale needs to play well. Speak about that contested ball, speak about clearances. Lachie Neale is one of the best in the competition. Yes, he may not be getting the service from the ruck, but I don't think that matters too much. He's one of the best. I do feel like he may cop the James Jordan tag, but he's going to work through it. He's a great player, and I really hope he puts on a good performance for Brisbane. The other player is their captain, Dane Zorko, who has had an incredible season. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but you've got to give credit where credit's due. He's done a lot. But at least from what I've seen, he hasn't had the biggest final series. I remember in that Giants comeback, he slotted in a couple goals and made it look like maybe had a better performance than he did. But I feel like he really needs to lift. When he gets that ball on the halfback, he really sets up a lot of play for him. He hits those 45 kicks. He's a leader for him. So Brisbane want to win. They need him to fire. And the other one is Cam Rayner, who I feel is like their sort of X-factor player. When Cam Rayner is, he doesn't need to have a lot of touches. He may only get 10 touches, but he could kick 3 goals. He could take a mark of the year contender. You don't know. Whether he's playing up forward, whether he's in the middle, he's got that, he's really strong. He's got that pace. He does all the great things to watch. So yeah, he's definitely one to watch for Brisbane. But getting into the predictions for the game and what I think is going to happen, I am backing Brisbane to win. I'm going to pick them by 8 points. As I said, I do think it's going to be high scoring, but I do think it's going to be a close game. But I've got Brisbane winning this. I've been backing them all season to win the flag, and I'm sticking with them while they're here. Then a couple other ones. First goal scorer, I'm going to go for a Sydney player, actually. I'm going to say Joel Amadi. I don't know. Why not? Someone different. And I know it happened in the 2 prelims. I'd have to check the other games, but the team that scored the first goal has actually gone on to lose. So that's kind of my thinking behind that one. Most goals for the game, I want to stick with Joe Danaher. I feel like he could get 3 or 4. I know it's be a high scoring game, as I've said a few times now, but I don't think you're going to have one player that kicks a massive bag. But Joe Danaher, I think he's been fantastic for him. As I said, only thing that will impact it is how much time he has to spend in the ruck. But we will see. And then a Norm Smith medalist. I'm going to go for Hugh McCluggage. I think that, he's an underrated player in that Brisbane team, but he finds a lot of contested ball. He uses the ball really well on his left foot. He can sneak forward and kick a couple goals. And I did actually realise this before I started. He actually got the 3 votes in that game against them earlier in the season, in the Brisbane-Sydney matchup. So, I don't know, maybe he does it again. Those are my predictions and a few things to watch for throughout the game. Let me know what you guys are tipping, who you think is going to win, what the margin's going to be, who's the Norm Smith, all of that. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a thumb up if you like it, and subscribe for more. Thank you.